Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. She's the author of the book Hardship Alaska, a memoir, no other than Mr. Donald Proffit. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Donald, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Daniel, for the invite to be on your podcast today. I'm Don Proffit. I live here in New Jersey in the United States. I've had a career as a music teacher, teaching little kids elementary school. I became a director of fine and performing arts as my career progressed, and then retired as a high school principal, which was the last place I ever expected to be. And since then, 2006, I've been traveling everywhere from Bali to Belgium, working with teachers in schools and helping them become more effective for student learning. So that's where I am. When COVID hit and my travels ceased, I turned to writing. And I'm now 76. So for me, this is a new career. While I was traveling from 2006 to 2020, during the time of travel, I would write. I had, in 2006, I live right on the Delaware River, right between Pennsylvania's right across from me and here in New Jersey. And we had a major flood. And in that flood, I lost all the photographs of my entire life. And so my writing while on a plane was trying to remember those images. What happened before the picture was taken, what happened during the photo, and then what happened after. And I spent most of that time writing about my experience as a conscientious objector. During the Vietnam War, I refused to carry a gun, but wanted to serve my country. And so thought that being a conscientious objector and working in a more positive way with people was the thing for me. So I found a job as far away from New Jersey as I could get, which was in Anchorage, Alaska, and spent 2 years there, which is all kept into this book here. So that's who I am. It was a good experience for me. It was hard,
Yes.
and I learned a lot. I was young, right? So that's kind of it. And now I'm right here, writing and retired and enjoying life.
In fairness, Mr. Donald, you look like 50 years old. And
Oh,
thank
thanks.
you so much for sharing your talents to the world.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your memoir. So, what inspired you to write your memoir?
So part of it was trying to reconnect those pictures, trying to keep them in my mind. So that was the main point. Then other people had heard me talk about these stories, and so that they're the ones who said, "You need to write this down." So it chronicles my last few months in college. I went to a music school in Princeton, New Jersey, Westminster Choir College. And then as I'm getting ready to graduate, I'm drafted. And so I thought it was a story that was important to share because I wasn't the only conscientious objector. And it had nothing to do with being against people who chose to serve, the country in armed services or being on the battlefield. But I had a different story to tell. So I wanted to put it together by taking all those little vignettes I was writing on airplanes and beginning to compile it into what became Hardship Alaska. the so it's the story of becoming a conscientious objector, of um, working hard to convince other people, my draft board, my selective service draft board, which is, the people who would send me off to war. They wouldn't believe that I wouldn't kill. So it was a long battle. It was 6 months, mostly rejections, and finally Richard Nixon was president at the time, and I had to appeal my case to him, to a national board that looked at it and then finally granted it. Then they gave me like 2 weeks to find a job and start my 2 years of service. So that's part of it. The other part was that I'm gay. And so part of it was that story of coming out. And so that's in the book, of that back in 1970, it wasn't as uh, readily accepted, or people weren't as tolerant at all. It was
Yes.
still considered a mental illness. So I was telling that story too, of coming out. It's a little bit of a love story, in that I was um, in love with my college roommate, who happened to be straight, heterosexual. So that is all. That also had the conflict that went into the book, dealing with loneliness. A young man of 22, trying to come to grips with himself. A degree in music. How can I use that where I am? And my first job up there was working with kids in group homes, residential treatment centers, where kids no longer are with their families, right? And so that's kind of what compelled me then to put this all together.
So, Mr. Donald, how do you describe your first impression of Alaska?
Oh, so it was a 10-day journey by car. I drove in a 1969 Volkswagen Beetle. Um, and my parents had me buy 4 extra tires that I kept on top of the car because it was a long journey. So I drive across the country, stopping, you know, every 8 hours or so for the night, or longer, depending on the day. Um, and when I get up towards British Columbia, and I'm beginning to move into the Yukon in Canada, the road is all gravel, right? It's the Alaska Highway that connects Alaska to the mainland, but all through Canada. So that experience of driving through the Canadian Rockies, staying in roadhouses in the middle of nowhere. Um, one one day I was driving and my car broke down, and I was stranded for a few hours. And a wolf even came out of the forest and started circling my car. So I was sure that it was over for me. I didn't know what would happen. Would anybody show up? I don't know. Luckily, a tractor trailer showed up. The driver happened to know Volkswagens, and he got me back on my way. But arriving into Alaska, uh, I had never seen beauty ever quite like it. The majesty of the mountains, glaciers, and then this drive into Anchorage, which, after all this wilderness, to find a city sitting here uh, was kind of a relief. And it was October 31st. It was Halloween night. And I remember arriving at the group home where I was going to work, where we had kids anywhere from 18 months to 18 years old, who were struggling to survive. They were in the midst of a Halloween party. So that was how I was greeted there. So I found Alaska, the wilderness, the people, to be extremely warming. and welcoming, especially at a time where I was in conflict, with the choices I had made as a conscientious objector. So most of my time there was in the city of Anchorage.
So, Mr. Donald, how does your memoir explore themes of resilience and perseverance?
Sure. Well, I'm on my own, number one. I'm in a strange land. In a sense, I'm a stranger to myself. I'm coming out as a gay man, um, uh, but also not really sharing that or talking about it because it wasn't accepted. Um, then I had been trained as a teacher. I'm now working with kids who have been in extreme crisis. I mean, crisis, not even like my decision to become a conscientious objector and drive to Alaska. These are kids whose parents had kicked them out, or there'd been divorce, or there'd been death, or the kids have been abandoned. So for me, um, I tend to be very sensitive, and I take in other people's feelings very quickly. If I'm in a room, I can feel other people's emotional states. Um, so that was difficult. In fact, it was extremely difficult. Where after I had been there for 6 months, they asked me not to work there anymore. The emotional toll the kids had gone through was also coming, I felt, directly at me. And it was hard for me to uh, really give them the attention and the love that they needed. But I also then was faced with, if I don't have the job and I have to do 2 years of service to the country, uh, and now I don't have a job, what am I going to do? If I go back home, I face jail and other judicial um, repercussions for not finishing. But the people I worked with at Alaska Children's Services were really compassionate, and they hooked me up with an Episcopal church in Anchorage, St. Mary's, and it turned out to be the best thing because now I could use my music. I worked with the choirs at the church. I played the organ. I worked with the youth group, set up a coffee house for folk singers in town and poets where they could come and perform. And then I had been there for a year or more, and the bishop of the state was impressed with my work. And he sent me up 150 miles north of the Arctic Circle to a tiny village, Inuit, Napiat whaling village called Point Hope. And it's the northwesternmost long-term inhabited village in the Western Hemisphere, for thousands of years. And there was this group of people there who still hunted whales, during the season, who lived in extreme conditions. But here I was for an entire summer working with them, doing music with them, um, uh, and learning a whole new culture that I never thought I would ever embrace or experience. I think for me that was a turning point because that was the experience um, that helped me develop my worldview. Uh, I think of being compassionate. It helped me become a better teacher, a better human, working with others.
Yes. So, Mr. Donald, what will be your advice for those people want to write their memoir?
I think for someone who hated writing, my goodness, as a student in school, I was not very good. In fact, I didn't even like reading. And so for me, right now to jump into this, I've learned so much. I've worked with great teachers, and I can't underestimate that more. That rather than doing it alone, if you're interested in doing this and starting it, take a few workshops, take a few classes. That's what really helped me. I had struggled for a few years, and nothing was going anywhere. And then when I started to take a couple classes and have my work critiqued by others in a manner that was helpful, specific to the problems I was dealing with, but that feedback delivered with kindness, that's what helped me. So I encourage anyone interested in writing to also seek out collaborators, people who will help support you on the way, because it's lonely. You're writing by yourself for hours a day, so having that connection with someone else who's doing it too is helpful. So that's one thing. The other thing is to write, is just not to worry about making mistakes. Creativity is about exploration and discovery. I worked with a teacher once, and I asked her to take a risk and be a little more creative. And she turned to me and said, I'm afraid to be creative because I'm afraid I'll make a mistake. And so we had a long talk about that. And I said, it's in the mistakes that we learn, right? And something wonderful comes out of those times we basically fall flat on our face. And then keep working. I had a second book published, which was a novel in October. And now I'm working on a third, which is historical fiction, um, which takes place in Bruges, Belgium in 1558. So I just keep going. I trying to identify great people to work with. Um, and so I think that's my advice for anybody. Just don't be scared, take the risk, and see what happens.
Yes, people, and stop procrastinating. If you have the passion to write, write,
Yep.
write, write,
Right,
and
right, right.
share to the world like
Yes.
Mr. Donald Proffit.
Right.
So, what are your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Well, what for me now at 76 years old, um, it's important to have a purpose. I think that keeps us young,
Yes.
right? A good outlook, but I think it keeps us alive, right? So to be of use in telling my story to others is one thing, and then for me to have that purpose to keep writing is the other thing. So if I can be so bold, the second book, uh, called The Object of His Affection, is more like a gay romance. It started out as an extension of Hardship Alaska. It
Yes.
was memoir, and then I kept hitting walls, and it just didn't go forward. Um, so I started thinking of it as fiction, and once I let that go and followed that train of thought, the book opened up. The characters opened up. They no longer, looked like me or the story I was telling. It became its own story. So I hope to continue um, exploring different writing forms with the time I have left, and hopefully making a difference in other people's lives through what I share.
Yes. Good luck to your goals, Mr.
Thank you.
Donald, and looking forward for more
Yes, yes,
books to come or novels to come.
yes.
So, to sum up our discussion, Mr. Donald, what message does your memoir hope readers take away from your story?
That perseverance, a sense of courage, not just physical courage, but moral courage to stand up for yourself, um, to follow your dreams,
Follow your
um,
dreams. Yes.
to follow your dreams. And, that time in my life really formed who I became as a teacher, an adult, in my relationships. Um, we want to live lives that are good and meaningful. And so it's also important to stop in life and reflect, looking back of where we are and appreciating that journey and, in a sense, the hardships that we face, that we all face. You know, I'm not alone here with this.
Yes, definitely. So, Mr. Donald, again, thank you so much for sharing your memoir to the world.
Thank you.
And as I said, we are looking forward for more empowering books.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Donald, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Sure. So I should have printed up a little sign. I have a website, www.donaldproffit altogether. And Proffit
Yes.
has 2 F's in it, donaldproffit.com. And there you'll see my blog posts, links to purchase my books, some poetry I've written, and interviews. So please stop by there, visit, subscribe, donaldproffit.com.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Donald Proffit, because if you support him more, as I said, more books to come.
Right.
So, Mr. Donald, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
More to come, people. See you soon.